Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Emily, for the introduction. And I am thrilled to have Michael joining us today to talk more about himself, which is something that he doesn't do often, and mainly to talk a little bit about the museum experience and showing how important it is for our region. So, with that being said, Michael, thank you so much for being here. We welcome everyone today to our member meetup with your fresh cup of coffee. So, how are you doing today, Michael?
I'm doing great. It is an honor to be here, and you're gonna have to pry pretty hard to get a lot of the stuff out of me. I'm like a big bull limpet clinging to the tide pool. No, it's an honor to be here. I love our members, love the museum. When at the end of the day, when you look at museums in general, it's all about the people, and that's everybody in the greater definition of the building, all the operations, all the research, the members, just general visitors, everything about it. Love it.
Yeah, well, we're getting some really great member feedback right now in our Q&A section where people are posting some of their favorite exhibitions, favorite museums. We have some that are coming up for the New York Museum Natural History, the New York Museum Natural History, the Dead Sea Scrolls several years ago was one that came up as well. Favorite childhood exhibition is the Van de Graaff generator at the Boston Museum of Science. Favorite exhibition at the Net is Costa Cactus. So there's a couple members that are posting their favorite exhibitions, museum experiences. But with that, specifically talking about member experiences, I definitely want to jump right in and ask you, Michael, what's the story? How did you get to where you're at now? I know that's something that we love to ask all of our guest speakers that are coming here today. Is the road that led them to where they're at the role at the museum today. So where did it all begin?
It was interesting. It was basically the reason I was born, but I didn't realize it till I actually started working at the Nat. And just zooming out, my family moved here from Canada in the middle of winter, and I was a youngster, and we lived on Crystal Pier. And we went swimming every day in the ocean in November, and nobody told us it was too cold. Within about 3 weeks, we drove to Palm Canyon at Anza-Borrego Desert State Park and hiked up Palm Canyon, and that just like blew our minds, and have been exploring the backcountry ever since. My parents were involved with the Unitarian Church over on Front Street, over in Hillcrest, and my mom volunteered in the park. Believe it or not, Planned Parenthood had a small table in the park to reach out to people, and it was primarily to interact with Navy couples. So these huge boatloads of Navy guys would pull up and they'd all board up, and they were interested in meeting attractive young women. And so Planned Parenthood had to reach out. They were also down by the waterfront and then had a little table. My mom volunteered and worked for Planned almost all her life. But anyways, I was a park rat. So we'd go to the park all the time. And that really shaped my life. I mean, it was the Museum of Man, the Art Museum, and the Natural History Museum. So art, science, and history is my obsession. After going to the Museum of Man, I would go home. I would go to Teclodi Canyon, make bows and arrows, baskets, pottery. Became quite knowledgeable about edible plants. The art museum, I just loved drawing and painting, and was usually in the young art show they had every year, which was a San Diego City Schools art show. And then at the Natural History Museum, that one really resonated with me. I would find fossils and bring them in. My dad would bring me in and have them identified. And I just remember vividly the person in mineralogy, which is now where the volunteer lounge is, bending down to talk to me eye to eye. And it's like, that is so cool. And I do that now when I talk to kids in the museum. I get down to their eye level. But anyways, he wore a bolo tie. I just couldn't help but stare at the bolo tie. And I actually had a bolo tie business in college called Bolo Madness. Anyways, how I ended up at the Nat, I'd already been working at galleries at San Diego State. We had 3 galleries on campus. And so for 4 years, I worked installing shows, doing lighting, gallery announcements. And then I worked in a small art store. And one day the phone rang, and it was the boyfriend of somebody I worked with saying, is there anybody at the Natural History Museum, at the art store that could come in and help finish these murals? We have a robotic dinosaur exhibit about to open up. The guy that was doing them flaked out and is gone. Is anybody there that can help finish this? And I just said, well, what time do you start in the morning? I'll be right there. And that was 1985.
Wow. Wow, I could just imagine that getting that call. I can just see it now. You know, Michael, circa 1985, getting that call and saying, "Oh yeah, I'll be right over."
Yeah, what time do you start? Yeah, so the museum was economically challenged back then. I worked there for about a year and jumped ship to the art museum, which was doing quite well. Worked at the art museum for 7 years and then came back to the Natural History Museum in 1992.
Um, and I've oftentimes when we've crossed paths at the museum, you know, when the museum was open and we were, you know, everyone was there, you'd always talk about how the your personal and your the passion that you have personally for all things nature kind of blend with your work. So it's like you don't really have a separation of work and life because a lot of things that you love to do, you're able to do that at the museum. Can you talk a little bit about that as far as like what the benefits of that and having a relationship like that?
Sure, yeah, it's a double-edged situation. But yeah, when I'm not working, on exhibits, I'm kind of working on my own exhibits. So I like photography. I like camping, backpacking. I design and sew my own camping gear, backpacks, sleeping bags, tents. I'm obsessed with the Channel Islands National Park. My goal is to spend 1 year camping on the islands. I'm about at 100 nights so far, getting close, but I got to ramp it
Wow.
up a little bit. And then I'm obsessed with the desert and Imperial Valley in particular, and the ancient shoreline of Lake Kauai, which was a lake. There were many lakes in that area that where the Salton Sea now occurs, and that is something I've been obsessed with since the 80s. So yeah, it's just one big blur. The art, science, history Venn diagram, I'm right in the middle.
That's great. It's definitely one of the things that comes to mind when you talked about your earliest trips when your parents took you to Palm Canyon and kind of that light bulb moment that went off that said, "Wow, this is amazing. This is an amazing place." Is there any other early memories that you have that really triggered that passion for the environment, for nature, or the appreciation and the love that you have for art? Was there another time that kind of stood out to you where you're like, this is something that I can see myself doing?
Yeah, it was just the way we rolled. I mean, we went camping pretty much every month, and that tradition I've continued on right up until COVID. So in Canada, we'd go camping. My memories of it is every trip was ruined by bears. That may or may not have been the case, but we just were constantly exploring the area. And in Boy Scouts, we were obsessed with hiking as a troop. The troop leaders also designed and made their own camping equipment. And we just completely explored San Diego County. Every major trail at some point I've probably been on or camped along. And that really shaped my life. So it's when you look at Costa Cactus,
Yeah.
that literally might have been the reason I was born. I'm not positive, but if you go to the patio, the backyard section above Tecolote Canyon, we'd never had a canyon top house. We were just back one row, but that is just purely coincidental, almost like the house I grew up in in Claremont.
Wow.
So if I wasn't in school or out camping, I was in the canyon, living like a wild animal or indigenous person or whatever.
Man, I hope we could find some pictures like that and post them on our Facebook page or our social media outlets that we have. We have Twitter and Instagram. I'm sure that's something that we would get a ton of views, and we would get a lot of people to kind of share some of those memories as well as they have of early times in our region. But we pose this question to our members, and I'm kind of eager to hear what you have to say, Michael, as far as what's your favorite museum of all times, and you know what is it about that museum that stands out to you of you know in your memory?
Oh man, that's a really tough question for me. So uh, what I would like to propose is I have three short answers that each look at museums through a different lens. So as a
Okay.
museum professional, I'm looking at things differently when I go in. So architecturally, my favorite museum of all time is the Brogue Museum in Los Angeles. It's fairly new, beautifully designed. The directive to the architect from the Broads was it's all about the collection. So the architecture of the museum reflects that. And the core of the building is an elevated collections vault. that visitors pass through on their way to the gallery. So they
Wow.
have a glass elevator and stairs that go through this huge collections vault, and you have these curated views into their collection. And then you pop out in the gallery and enjoy the pieces from the collection that are on exhibit. It's also a double walled building. It's totally insulated from the outside. So it's the best example of caring for collections with passive care that do not rely on heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. And they have the best museum lighting ever because it's 100% natural light if you're there during the day. They have skylights with automated louvers that maintain perfect light levels, 5-foot candles, 10-foot candles. So that's architecturally, the Broad is the winner. Personally, the Marciano Art Foundation, which is a mid-century modern building on Wilshire Boulevard. It's designed by Millard Sheets, who is a instrumental architect in mid-century buildings, but had no ego. He's not famous at all. Nobody knows who he is, but he did all these Southern California mid-century buildings. Anyways, the Marciano Art Foundation bought this building. It was a Masonic temple that sat empty for years and created a gallery for their personal collection. The Marciano brothers made a fortune selling Guess jeans. Don't hold that against them. They have great taste in art, and all the money they made, they spent on art. So they opened up and they had an exhibit called Unpacking, which was literally like our Unshelved. And it's basically, they had a creative curator go through and create selections from the collection to open this building with. Spectacular, unbelievable, every piece a winner. They placed them within the building to kind of relate to the architecture. The feature show is Jim Shaw's Wig Museum. So Jim Shaw's an artist that likes to work with old theater backdrops and is a great illustrator. So in the Masonic Temple were all these backdrops for this huge theater where they have these pageants. So Jim Shaw got all these theater backdrops and they reinstalled them in these giant galleries and then added to it. Fantastic show. Okay, just to wrap it up, my personal favorite museum experience was actually the Kremlin museums in Moscow. So in ancient times, 1989, San Diego had the Soviet Arts Festival, and I was the exhibit designer for the Fabergé egg exhibit at the San Diego Museum of Art, and had 45 imperial eggs, which was the biggest collection of Fabergé eggs ever. And part of that exhibit was traveling to Moscow to install the show there. So honored to work and do the show here. And then I got to fly to Moscow, and I was an egg courier. So I had a ratty little thrift store duffel bag with about $16 million in it, flying on British Air. And so I was a courier captain with 3 of us, each with an egg. We flew to London and then from London to Moscow. And the exhibit cases were over 2 weeks late. So I had a 2-week period to just kind of hang out with museum professionals at the Kremlin. And we pretty much had nothing but fun. I mean, it's like, what do you want to do today? So I was assigned an interpreter, and then I was paired up with their exhibit designer, and they'd say, well, let's go to the Mayakovsky Museum. So we just went and explored museums. That was a peak experience for me, just working. And I got to spend probably a month there, just short shy of a month, twice, setting up the show and then taking the show down. Just one quick note on the Fabergé eggs.
Yeah.
They think it's hilarious. When you go to their museums, they have like a 6-foot diameter gold plate from the King of Sweden from the 1500s. And these Fabergé eggs are recent. They're made in the 19 teens, and they're made by Carl Fabergé, which is a jewelry chain. It would have been like Zales. So they just think the eggs are just ridiculous. And it's like the worst thing in their collection, but it was such a big deal. But it was really fun to work with them.
That's a great story. I love that. You definitely do have the approach where you take these different lenses. And one of the questions that kind of came up right now is what are some, like, with all these different experiences and the different lenses that you have, Michael, when you're talking about your favorite museums, what are some of the creative challenges when it comes to exhibits, specifically maybe for the museum? Is there anything that comes up where with your team when you're thinking about what is it that we want to showcase at the Net?
Well, it's an interesting process. We're a business at the end of the day. We're a nonprofit, but we have to have people come in the doors. That's one of the realities of being a museum in this country. You don't get a lot of federal funding, and we have to generate our own revenue. So if you're in a business that's presenting things, you have products. You're creating a product. So any business worth its salt will have family focus groups. They'll involve the customers in the creation of that project. So that drives a lot of what we're doing. We also have our own strategy plan, and that's a big part of it, implementing what came out of the results of our strategy plan, which is leading with our science. So that drives a lot of our exhibits. And the main challenge really is we have so many ideas, which one are we moving forward with? So we do a lot of testing before we have a kind of a short list, like to keep the sort of like do a list of 3 and then pick one of those to move forward with. The other challenge is having a balanced offering, because not every exhibit is going to resonate with everybody, right? So we've got from like newborns to people that are 100 years old, all coming in from all over the world. What are they going to think of this? So we need to strike a balance. We need to try to have something for everyone, but not everything's for everyone. And I like to compare it to if you're opening a restaurant, if you really want everybody to be happy, you're going to open a soup plantation. I like more the food court model, where we can have a sushi bar, we can have, whatever, kids happy meals, or something better, healthy happy meals. But you know what I'm saying, that we can offer a range of distinct experiences that are more targeted. But at the end of the day, when you average it out, we have a balanced offering. So we've been doing that. We opened the backyard. That's definitely for young families or youngest visitors. We're working on the Baja California exhibition right now. That's for kind of young adults. That's our target audience. So we're being more focused on our presentations, who it's for, the language, just sort of the vocabulary, the voice of the exhibit, the look and feel. So
now you gave me a different lens. So whenever I go to museums, I'm going to look at it through the food court lens. Like, what kind of offerings do they have, and how diverse is it of an offering tray? Is it a food court or is it a soup plantation? So that's a different perspective that you just gave me, Michael. So I'm going to definitely take that and run with it. But you brought up the strategy plan and talking about leading with our science. And I know, and you mentioned a little bit about Baja exhibition. Is there anything that the exhibits team has been working on with, even though our doors are closed? I know there's been a lot of construction and a lot of things happening in the museum. Can you talk a little bit about some of those exhibitions that are getting some attention right now?
Sure. Well, we installed California Blooming a while ago, but nobody's seen it yet but us. And that is also the fruit of our strategy plan, this idea of leading with our science and having a conservation message. We did create a architectural interpretive plan for the museum. So as visitors move through the building vertically, they enter either at south on the 2nd floor or the atrium level, that we've got a plan. So the atrium level is amenities. I mean, like, the kids are starving, they're hangry, we need to grab a snack. We need to get a souvenir before we leave. Where are the bathrooms? All that stuff. As you move up, the 2nd floor is about our region. Those, it's fossil mysteries, Costa Cactus, and then we have a rotating gallery. 3rd floor is about our research. And then the 4th floor is conservation. So California Blooming is the first in a series of that. We have a pretty long list of other photo shows to follow up. But we have spent a lot of time kind of going through and figuring out what to do. In addition to the strategy plan that's being implemented, we also have the master plan, which is pages and pages of stuff that we should be doing or need to do. So we're weaving that in. And one of those projects is building a new gallery up on the 4th floor. So during the closure, we've taken advantage of that and been under construction to convert office space into a 2,000 square foot gallery, which will be the home of the Baja Peninsula exhibition, which is what we're working on now.
And that'll cover pretty much our region, right? Our region spans from the Point of Concepcion, Santa Barbara, to southernmost tip of Baja Sur.
That's right. Yeah, people tend to think the border's like always been there. No, the border has been there. In fact, California's old nickname is Mexico. That's what I wanted to call the show. But
Right. It's one of those things where definitely we're excited to see, and I know a lot of our members can't wait to see what new exciting things are going to be coming from the museum. Is there a wish list that you have for your that the exhibition team has? I know a lot when we've interviewed some of our other guests. There's always a department wish list as far as what they hope to find, discover, launch. Is there a wish list that you would like to share with everyone here of what maybe us members can look forward to and maybe potentially in the future experiencing?
well, it's been interesting since we've stopped doing traveling exhibitions. The wish list has been coming in reality. So a lot of these things that we're working on now, such as the backyard. The backyard, that opening into the atrium, that was a closet for education, and it was a classroom that was underutilized. That's oceanfront real estate. And in fact, in San Clemente, they do have an oceanfront view self-storage space. And I thought, wow, that's like our atrium. I mean, it's a closet that opens up on an atrium. That's oceanfront property. So we've opened that up. The unshelved, just sharing the weird stuff that we have in combination with our important research specimens. People love a behind the scenes thing. They're fascinated with our research. So unshelved is something we've been wanting to do forever. This Baja Peninsula exhibit, we've been wanting to do forever. Remodeling those offices on the 4th floor, that's a 21-year-old idea that we're now doing. So we're living the dream, and we're headed even further in that direction. One of my kind of wish lists is to activate the atrium. We have some ideas for that we're going to try to move forward with. And the gift shop is being reimagined. I think the gift shop has been we've had contracted out. It's been run by an outside company that actually does retail. They've done a great job, but the merchandise doesn't reflect our mission or the exhibit experience here. So we're already re-envisioning that. We'll feature our own images in a print-on-demand merchandise. That has already happened. And taking that further, I would recommend we sell Dr. Michael Wall brand narrow-leaf milkweed seeds. So if you care about monarchs, you can buy Dr. Michael Wall's own brand of milkweed seeds and go plant the correct milkweed for monarchs. We can sell sustainable home goods. One of the shifts we need to make as a nation, and a lot of countries in general, is to reduce this whole cycle of consuming and throwing away. And I think the store is an opportunity to reduce or eliminate small plastic things and provide more meaningful gifts that can help people reduce their carbon footprint. For example, we've stopped using paper towels here at home. We use cloth dish towels. It works great. They just wash them up. It works great. So we tend not to buy things that are literally just to get thrown away. But I think that's happening. That's been at the top of our list, to connect everything. And the other kind of wish list thing that's also happening is reaching out to young adults. So we have our evening events, and we do offer some food and drink. That really works wonders. But we've expanded to resonate with 20-somethings, which is kind of a tough audience. The teenage years, I mean, they're gone. It's really hard to have something that they'd be interested in, but you can reel them back in the 20s, and many 20-somethings are really interested in science and botany and all kinds of stuff.
Well, you bring up the young adults and the next generation. How do you see the importance of mentoring the next generation of exhibit designers, museum leaders? Like, where do you see that, and how have you helped that? I know that there's a little bit of some information about that of what you're actively doing right now.
Yeah, now since Costa Cactus opened, the reason I'm born now is to mentor people in museum work. So as soon as this meeting concludes, I have a 2-hour Zoom meeting with the Museum Studies program at Mesa College. And so I'll be joined by Bradley Selick, our exhibit content developer, and Samantha Moreno, our exhibits project coordinator. And we're going to talk for the first hour about careers in museums. And then I'll talk for the last hour about museum lighting. But the careers in museums, I've been involved with Mesa College Museum Studies program for, I think, 18 years now. And I do that to show all these students that are graduating with art degrees that there's a whole world of jobs in Balboa Park and the other museums here in San Diego. California has 100,000 art degrees handed out every year, and all but 10 of them are going to work at a Starbucks. But if you look at Balboa Park, there's about 2,000 employees in the park. Most of the jobs are related to the cultural attractions, and it's a great career option if you're interested in a career in the arts. So that's one side of my mentoring. They do behind the scenes tours, by the way. So this will be our first behind the scenes tour on Zoom, which means there is no behind the scenes tour, but I have the students come through the museum and they're just blown away at the amount of art we do to create these exhibits. Anyways, and then mentoring the exhibits department that we have here at the museum now. So as I said, because Costa Cactus is open, this is now my priority, is kind of helping the next generation understand the traditions and techniques to create these exhibitions. And every museum or institution, cultural institution that produces things like exhibits, they all have their own traditions, their own distinct look and feel. And many of those are part of the charm of that institution. And I think it's valid, if not important, to continue those traditions. So you have this, it will evolve and the paint colors and everything will be different, but the way the exhibits are created, there's a kind of a dignified tradition, just like the way we operate in our science department. You're standing on the shoulders of those that came before you. And
Wow.
so
Yeah,
myself and then Jim Melly, we're teaching all these youngsters the tricks of the trade.
that's great. And I know that's one of the things that I definitely want to touch on. And we're kind of nearing the end of our chat. If you can believe that, Michael, that our half hour is coming up to a really close. But before we wrap it up, I did want to kind of talk and really briefly, how do you interweave like sustainability into exhibitions? Like if you were to give a quick 2-minute little talk about how do you do that and achieve that in our exhibitions, what would it be?
Sure, we scrutinize everything we purchase, right? So if whatever it is, we'll find out where is it made, who made it, how far away is the factory, all of that. What is the lifespan? We're willing to pay a little more to have something that lasts twice as long as opposed to something that ends up in the recycle bin. So we're very mindful of the materials that we use in addition to things we're purchasing. We try to use regional trees. So we've been using redwood from just across the park. You can go across the bridge, there's the old redwood grove, which has died. So we use, that's about as local as you're going to get. And then all the materials, we've pretty much abandoned any kind of solvent-based material. We use all water-based everything. And then this lifespan of the furniture, the furniture we're making or acquiring now is reusable. So the exhibit furniture will live on in other exhibits. So we have a whole inventory of cases and tables and chairs that we're building up that we can rotate through. We've won national awards for sustainability efforts in Costa Cactus, the library, and locally in the park. So we've been recognized for that. Just super quickly, we're working on passive techniques to care for our collections, both in exhibits and in our research areas. And that's taking advantage of the great architecture of the original building, William Templeton Johnson, that was carried into the new wing, these thick concrete walls, to take full advantage of that.
That's great. Well, Michael, thank you so much for your time. We're going to bring back Emily to talk a little bit about some other member experiences that you all can take advantage of. But Michael, it was a pleasure having you join us today. I hope we were able to answer a few of the questions that came up in our Q&A box. And I know that's something that I can't wait to I'm looking forward to is experiencing the new exhibitions that we have coming up. So Michael, thank you so much. And we're going to bring back Emily to give a few more reminders of what's coming up later this month.
Thank you.